Welcome to the Tuckamore Leader Podcast, where our goal is to help you grow in your purpose and be fruitful in your calling. Well, hello, everybody. This is Andrew Ball, and we are at our very first podcast, number 1. This is where it all starts. This is the very beginning. This is the groundwork, and we are at the Tuckamore Leader Podcast, and today we have a special treat. I was thinking about for our first podcast, who would I like to hear from the very first moment? And one name popped into my head, and that was my friend Andrew Holm. Andrew is the pastor of the Pentecostal Church in Bay Roberts and is doing a fantastic job, doing a lot of creative things through his church for his community. And so I wanted to speak to Andrew Holm today about keeping vision even in difficult times. I think Andrew would probably be the first one to tell you that life hasn't always been easy in ministry. You have challenges, there's seasons where there's difficulty, but keeping that vision is so important. So many of us, when we get to difficult times, feel as though we need to throw the vision away or we need to revamp it or revision it. Andrew, along with his wife Deidre and his 2 kids, are a minister in Bay Roberts, and I'm so happy to have you today, Andrew. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. The introduction was inspiring me. I think.
Yeah, I try to make everyone sound. I try to make everyone sound really, really good.
It might be a little too good, but we'll see. We'll do my best.
Listen, Andrew, you are a young and up and coming leader. The reality is, in our fellowship here in Newfoundland, and I really respect you for what you're doing. I really look up to you, and I kind of gleaned from your knowledge and insights, and also sometimes from your mistakes. You save me some heartache sometimes. Being a trailblazer is not an easy job. But I had kind of sent you a couple questions in advance, and I want to talk to you a little bit today about keeping vision in difficult times or challenging seasons. So let me start with this one. This is not on the one I sent you, but have you experienced difficult times and challenging seasons?
No. It's been a smooth ride. No, that's a little bit of sarcasm. It's strange to say, what is difficult. I think sometimes you have to realize that if you're doing anything new or positive or moving forward, you're going to receive some sort of criticism. You're going to receive some sort of conflict. And so at one side of it, you're encouraged by it because it's challenging people. And at the other side, you got to deal with it. So yes, I have. Yeah, it hasn't been smooth sailing, although it hasn't been that crazy either. It's part of my personality too, right?
Absolutely.
I'm not afraid to take on the conflict, and that can actually hurt me at sometimes too, right? Because I don't care. So you tend to be a little more harsher with how you deal with things, but you can't be afraid to deal with it either. Sometimes they're my fault. Sometimes I didn't communicate properly, or I didn't express myself probably the way I should have done something, or maybe left something alone. And so I often tell people, if you're dealing with something complex, first look at yourself. It could be your fault, right? And so if it is, then maybe take a check on yourself. Do you have to apologize? Do you have to re-communicate? What do you have to do? And other times it just might be something that someone else doesn't like. So you mess with something. The sacred cow in the church, right? You didn't know it was that sacred, but you did something to it, right? Absolutely. So you might have to apologize yourself. And other times it could be just painful. New stuff is painful. It's not the same. It's different. It's we always did this for 20 years, or I always did this even for 4 or 5 years. People get used to things pretty quick, and so changing something is very problematic. So yeah, the short answer is yes.
I can see that this podcast is going to go long, and that's wonderful. Let's start with the first question about vision, and it's this. Can you tell me why having a vision is important to you, and some things that you have done to help keep your vision healthy and alive no matter what season you're going through, no matter what time you're going through?
Yeah, like when we first came into Bethel, we asked the question kind of like, what is the mission? What do you want to do? And they all kind of had an idea, but they didn't have anything on paper. It was kind of like, we want to go here, we want to do this, we want to be this kind of church, but there was nothing that was kind of said, okay, well, this is our statement that we're holding on to, or this is something that we're trying to work towards. It had nothing like that on paper. So for me, it was kind of like a benchmark. So where are we going from here? Because you need to know, if you're going to move forward, you need to know where you're going.
Good.
And even more important than that, you need to know why you're going to go there, right? Because if you don't know that, then you don't create any buy-in. No one wants to be a part of it, right? They're kind of like, well, I'll be here for the ride, but if something goes astray, I'm just going to go to the next church. But if they have the why, they know there's going to be hiccups. They know it's not going to run smoothly, but they know why we're doing it, and they'll stick in it for the long haul. So when you're dealing with some of these things, it's so important because first of all, you need to know what the big picture is. So when we talked about a second ago, when conflict comes towards you, you need to know that there's a big picture. It's not just the Aunt Susie who's sitting across your desk who has a problem because you're singing too many new songs now. It's now there's a big picture, right? There's something bigger than this. So it's going to hurt for a moment, but it propels you to tomorrow, right? And the other thing that I love about vision and selling vision is that the people around you start to get it. And so when you start to feel overwhelmed, the people around you are encouraging and saying, "This, but Pastor, tomorrow is there. You know, don't quit now. Tomorrow's there, right?" And we'll keep going together. So it's very important. So you need to know where you're going and why you're going there in order for you to move forward.
Yeah, that's great. And the idea of having the big picture, sometimes we get the confusion of short-term goals versus long-term goals and vision.
Yeah.
And the idea is that, you can have a vision for one event, but what is the big picture? What is the whole thing at the end of the day? What is your church wanting to do? What is your church trying to achieve? What is that long-term goal? And I think it's great, like you said, to keep the big picture in mind, because if we can get captured on the small picture, well, then in the difficult times or when it doesn't seem to pan out like we want it to, we give up. And I kind of, this how my brain works a little bit, but I see vision as a baseball game. There's no time limit on a baseball game. It goes till all the 9 innings are done or extra innings. Unlike a hockey game or NFL or something like that where there's a time limit, there's no limit on baseball. And the objective is to win, no matter how long it takes. And so that's a good point about the bigger picture and knowing what it is and why. That's so important. And we're actually reading a book together that talks about the importance of why. And so really glad you bring that up.
Absolutely.
So, Andrew, you were 25 years old when you became the senior leadership of the church in Bethel. And so can you tell me a little bit how you felt at that time? Both you and your wife came there. And how you felt and how you established or kind of went about, and you kind of touched on this, but how you went about finding the vision for Bethel, because it can't just be your vision, it needs to be their vision.
We weren't looking for it. We wanted to go to a staff role. I was convinced. We came, so I had some business experience, but I didn't have any pastor experience. So I came out of seminary, had 2 degrees, a business degree and a master's. So I felt educated, but I didn't have the pastoral. And I knew I was a harsh person. I knew I knew my personality was not like this is pastor material. I knew I had potential, but I knew I had to work on some things too. So I was blessed to do my internship over with a guy named Matt Joy, who has transformed my life in a good way. Only because he's so different than I am, and so he's really stretched me that way, right? So I brought that experience, but I remember coming into to Bethel and kind of thinking, Deidre and I, both of us, I think Deidre just vocalized it more than I did. We were just like, what are we doing, right? Like, what is this? I remember going across the parking lot, and we didn't have any kids at the time, so it was just Deidre and I, and we came across the parking lot, which is the house is right next to the church. And I had my guitar in one hand, I had my books and Bible in the other hand. And, Deidre, we're just walking across and we're like, are we really doing this? This is our first Sunday. Are we really doing this? Like, this doesn't make any sense. We're not ready for this. And the truth be told, we weren't ready for it. And not even close. And it's a good place. It's a good place to be, because it caused me every single Sunday to say, listen, God, if you don't figure this out, I'm done. Right? So complete dependence on him. And so we agreed to a 1-year interim, which I would almost tell any new pastor to do because it was a blessing. I could have walked away in the first year, and they could have pushed me away in the first year, and no hard feelings, right?
Yeah, mutual.
And so mutual, right? So it was no pressure. We just kind of walked in. We said we'll keep everything the same the first year, and I think about halfway through the first year, we started dreaming a bit with the church board. Didn't make it public or anything. We just kind of dreamed a bit, and we started sharing a little bit where we feel ministry is heading in this generation coming up, and how we can make an impact in the area, and learning a bit about where they came as a church so far, what the journey they've been through, learning about what caused some pain in the past, what was exciting from the past. We had those honest conversations, and we actually went through a book called Simple Church, and you probably don't have them as a sponsor, I'm sure, but maybe you will get them as a sponsor, Lifeway Ministries. But it's a great book. Tom Rainer is one of the authors of that book, and it really talks about creating a simple vision, a simple process that your church can kind of go through, and taking away all of the excess stuff, stuff that keeps you busy, right?
Is that the one that Tom and Sam Rainer wrote together?
I'm not sure.
I'm reading one now, and I forget the exact title off the top of my head right now, but I'm reading one, and the idea about simple church is in this book, so I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, well, Sam obviously is very, very established now himself, and so he's very possible that he either wrote a book like it or referenced it, but maybe you can put it in the show notes for your.
There you go.
For your listeners. But it was a great way to start the conversation, because they never did that before. So this is a new process. And so we started off by doing a mission sort of weekend that led into mission vision kind of weekend that kind of dreamed together. Wait, no, hold on. I'm forgetting something very, very important. Halfway through the first year, we decided that we would let our name stand for a vote into the church, and so we went through all that, got a great confidence of vote, and we started leading church. Then we started making public the vision and the mission for the church, and so it was a journey. But the journey started as almost an ongoing annual journey, where we start in September. We do our mission series. We talk about aspects of the mission. We launched it in 1 year. That took a full year before we started talking about something else. And so we launched our mission, Growing Together as we Worship, Love, and Serve. And that became the why. That became the thing we held on to. This is what we're doing. This is the whole purpose of the whole mission of the church. And so that became our mission statement. And we did that for, I don't know, solid year, maybe a year and a half, if not longer. Then we did something the following year or the year after, called our values. And we put the ball in their court, in the congregation's court. It was phenomenal. Like we did a same thing, our mission in September, and we handed out little cards to put down what they value. So we went through the 4 parts of our mission: growing, worship, love, and serve, and we asked them to put a relevant value to those concepts of our mission. So how are we going to protect our mission? That became the how. And they literally put on paper what they value. And then we compiled them as a church board and kind of fine-tuned them a little bit and put them in. But it was theirs. It was all theirs. And now we have them on a banner next to our mission, and this is what we value. And I always say, because people get upset in churches. I don't know if you know this, but they get upset in churches.
Not my church.
No. And usually they get upset over like superficial things, like the kids made a mess on the carpet, right? And I always look back at the values, and I say, but hold on, we don't value carpet. It's not there.
Yeah.
Right? We value kids. You put that on the list, but we don't value carpet.
Yeah, that's good.
Right. So I always say, listen, if they're older kids, especially, make them clean up the mess. Create a rule where you push away what you value.
That's
because we could easily do that, right? We can put so that helped us protect our mission. And then now in year 6, now we're talking about vision, where we're going, what we're changing, what we're doing. And And so it's been a long journey, but I think it's helped us get there to where we need to be.
You make a great point that so many times pastors and church leaders and leaders in general sometimes miss, and it's this: that vision comes from me, it's all about me, and it's for me, as opposed to
Yeah.
this vision is for you. And you got to put the ball in the court of the church or of this organization you're leading, because until they own it, they won't live and breathe it. And I think
No.
that point is great of giving them an opportunity to tangibly put down, okay, how do we worship together? Okay, how do we value this and how do we value that? And what does serving mean to you? And I can remember when I was first interviewed for the position, when I came to my current church, I came in the youth pastor position. We talked about, reaching out and doing outreach and being missional and trying some new things. I was saying this to the church board that was looking at hiring me. And they
Right.
were saying these words as well. And I said, stop now. We need to maybe ask a question that we can't assume that our definition are the same of these things. So what does being missional mean to you? Or what does outreach mean to you? Or what does doing things differently mean to you? And one by one they went around. And one I'll never forget is this one board member talked about how he had grandchildren who were coming of the age of being a teenager. And he
Right.
said, if we don't do something for them and their friends, they're not going to be around. They're not going to be making church a priority. They're not going to make the Christian faith a priority. From that moment on, everyone knew what we meant, and I knew what they meant. And so I had very little, if any, resistance doing some things simply because they knew the vision.
Yeah.
And they knew what I meant when I said creative outreach or doing things differently. And at the same time, I could always refer back to that meeting and say, listen, this is my goal is to reach the grandkids. My goal is to reach the community kids. My goal is to grow them in their faith. And so we kind of had that common understanding. And I think that's a great point to make with yourself in regards to getting them to write it down or getting them to give their feedback, not whether they like it or not, but how do we reach this? How do we go about this? That's an excellent point. That is really good, and I'm really glad you brought that up. First of all, what is the vision of Bethel Church in Bay Roberts, and how did you come to this concise vision or mission?
Right. So our mission statement is to grow together as we worship, love, and serve, and that's going to take new forms on in every stage of our ministry. But that's the foundation, right? Right now, we're launching a new vision in terms of making room for people to belong. And that's we just announced that we're going to be looking at doing a second morning service because we don't have room right now for people to belong. They show up and they might have a seat on Sunday morning. They may not. That's the kind of atmosphere that we're in. So it's really good, but we had to kind of create a new atmosphere now where we can do that. So our mission statement has always been growing together as we worship, love, and serve, and that's a statement that it came from. I say me. I get not really. I mean, I prayed about it. It sounds too cool for me to put it together, so it must be God, right?
Or Deidre.
So, or Deidre. No, yeah. Well, Deidre is the creative, crazy person that keeps me joyful. But when it comes to systematically thinking something through, she looks to me for that stuff. She just makes it fun.
There you go.
So, but yeah, me and the board going through some literature, some books and stuff, and praying about it, meeting together. It's amazing how things kind of morphed into what it became. Even our logo was kind of connected to our mission statement. The colors correspond with it and stuff, and even our ministry logos, they correspond together. And so, but it didn't come overnight. Like it was months of conversation with the board. It was on the agenda every single meeting. It was a part of our regular conversation. And so it was definitely a group effort. They trusted my lead on it, but I trusted their discernment as well, just as much. So yeah, no, it's been a journey. And once we settled on it, we knew it. Like, I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but like once we kind of put it on paper and we saw the logo next to it, we picked all that out and we were like, yeah, that's it. Like, don't change anything. don't breathe too loud, right? And it was good, but it was definitely a journey. It wasn't a solo job. It wasn't like that at all. Selling it is the hardest part.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, the church board gets it because they're part of the journey. That's why we wanted to include the values with the rest of the congregation, because it's so easy to kind of like just say, here's our vision, here's our mission, like like it or lump it, like just kind of deal with it, right?
Yeah.
But I'm saying it so much that I get sick of it myself. And and someone told me, well, that's a good thing. So if you're sick of it, the people are just getting it.
Yeah.
And
that's
so
right.
I've kind of held on to that a little bit, but and not everyone will get it.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone will get it. There are people who still don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in year 6 now, right? So it's not it's not a bad thing. We have open tenure now in our movement, meaning once you're voted in the first time, then you can stay for as long as you need to, pending your evaluations and stuff. But we went through one revote as a congregation. And I know I had 96% the first time, and I went down to 88 the next time. People just don't always want to see the next step, and that's fine. And
But probably a more honest vote, the second vote.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Well, don't feel bad. Listen, Jesus gave a mission over 2,000 years ago, and there's still people who don't get it. So 6 years is not bad. I think it's wise of you, and wise of anybody listening today, who would want to cast a vision statement or a mission statement to have goals, but don't be so specific in your vision that you can't apply it to other aspects of the ministry or of what you're doing. So yours is, we are growing as we worship, love, and serve. Is that correct? Is that the vision? Did I get that right?
Yeah.
And the one that we're working on at our church now is, making people disciples and discipling people. And the idea of we put everything we do through this lens. The question of, okay, is this going to help us make people disciples, which is, letting them know about Jesus Christ and come to the knowledge of his saving power? Or is this going to be one of those moments that help people grow in their faith? And by looking at through this lens, we're able to kind of cut the fat of things that don't really matter in the long run and are giving us the ability to stop doing things that we've always done just because we've always done them. And so this year, our Christmas program is going to look different. We're not doing a whole big cantata at the church because we weren't reaching the people we were needed to reach. And so this year, we're doing a family event geared specifically for families so that we are making disciples. And those who are already Christians, they're being taught the Christmas story once again in a creative way that they are being discipled in their faith. And so I think it's a good point to not make your vision a statement or your mission statement so focused that if it's not within the small perimeters of what it is, going to reach it.
Yeah, and God will change it too.
Mm-hmm.
Like he'll morph it, right? And and it's his timing and stuff. I thought 3 years we had this nailed down. I just kind of thought that we would be there. My naivety or whatever.
Yeah.
100%. However, what we are seeing, and is really exciting, is we're seeing people who haven't really understood it, but we've also seen people who have bought in 110%.
Makes you feel good.
And so, right. And now they're leading ministries, and they're saying, how are we going to worship together or grow together as we worship, love, and serve? They're asking that question. I don't have to push them, right? And so they're telling me how their Christmas program, for example, this year they picked out a Christmas program that lines up with that, and they constantly are doing stuff like that. So it's encouraging on so many different levels, and it's worth the conflict and the and the issues up front kind of get through it, right?
Here's another question I have for you. When you think about the whole scope of Scripture from Genesis to Revelation, who is one or two or three people you see, characters in the Bible, that you think exhibit great vision, even in challenging times?
I think in terms of conflict and in terms of leading the people, I've always gone back to David. And yes, he was the king that everyone loved, and even though he wasn't the perfect king, but everyone loved him. But it's more than that. Like I look at his early days, and And I mean, he just did what he was called to do. Very simple.
Mm-hmm.
He was a shepherd boy, right?
Yeah, that's right.
You know,
He never changed, did he?
no,
What saved him with Goliath was what he learned in the field.
yeah, absolutely, right. And even along the journey, like, um, you know, he even eventually is anointed as king. He doesn't come looking for it. You know, Samuel has to go find him. He doesn't, you know, but he embraces it when he does, and he doesn't go to his head. So David was, even at a very young age, David just did what he was called to do. A very simple life. You know, he was a shepherd boy. That's what he did. You know, it wasn't glamorous. It wasn't, but in the moment, we learned later that he took on a bear, he took on a lion, and he did his job faithfully. And as that progresses, he's even, I mean, he takes on Goliath. Obviously, everyone knows that story.
That's right.
When everyone else is afraid to take him on, and he just knows that God has equipped him with a few stones and a sling, and he just does it. You know, and then later, he's actually, what blows me away is he's actually anointed as the king, and yet he doesn't. You know, he knows that the people recognize King Saul as the king, and so he serves the king, even though he's anointed, right? And he doesn't come looking for the anointing. You know, Samuel has to go look for him, and he find him, but he doesn't come looking. Oh yeah, that's me. You know, I'm in the yeah. I'm one of Jesse's boys. Yeah, that's me.
That's right.
He just keeps doing what he's called to do, and then of course, you know, God promotes him, and it takes a long journey. I mean, King Saul's even trying to kill him, and he shows leadership in the caves and in the wilderness, and he finds people, and people just flock to him, not because he's saying, I'm the king, follow me, but because I think he had vision. He had a passion behind him that people just followed. And it's always been a passion of mine to say, what can I learn from that?
Yeah.
Like, you know, humble yourself, Andrew. You're a pastor of a small community church that's making an impact, no doubt. But you're not just do what God's called you to do.
Yeah, it's good.
You know, and even like my blog and stuff. Like, people have asked me why I keep doing that. And, you know, it has some traction and stuff, but you know, God's basically said, this is an avenue that I want you to pursue. Just keep doing it.
Yeah, that's
There's going to be right.
I forgot about mentioning your blog in the introduction.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I didn't really mean to do it then. There have been times, and I'll say this: there have been times when I have quit, right? And up until 2 years ago, I mean, it wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah,
I was posting something, and like I'd have 2 views, and I'm like, why even do this?
And was it Andrew and Deidre, or was your mom involved?
Oh no, it was mom, 100% mom. Yeah.
I hope my mom listens to this.
Yeah, I'm sure she will. But like, up until a point where I had to say, okay, God, I will do this every week. I'm going to blog every week. I'm going to post something every week, no matter what. Yeah. No matter if last week was a tank, or if last week was the best post I've ever written. And ever since then, it's grown leaps and bounds. But it's only because I think I'm faithful to the call that God's put in there, not waiting for the big hoopah.
Yeah, it's true, right? Because your blog has been featured in some prominent places. Your blog has stirred up a lot of conversation at times, and so it has gained a lot of traction. And you, like, again, I've mentioned before, I view you as one of the young, strong leaders in our fellowship in Newfoundland, and partly because of that is your influence through your blog. And I've read it. Don't always agree with everything you say, which is fine, but it makes me think, and it stirs up discussion at our dining room table. And actually, I've sensed Julia, my wife, has about to start a blog, and so you're kind of blazing the trail, and so she kind of talks to you at times saying, how do I do this, or what should I be careful of in this regard? But your blog is great. And for those listening, the blog is called The Journey Home, HOLM, right? The play on your last name, which is a great pun. Right. I love it. But you can find that at andrewholm.com. Andrewholm, HOLM.com.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks for the play. I didn't mean that. I apologize for that.
Will you be a sponsor for us?
Yes, I'll be a sponsor of my negative money.
Yeah, that's right. Well, just send an IOU and we'll get the job done.
Yeah, right.
When I think of leadership in the Bible and vision casting, it seems like that a lot more characters come to mind from the Old Testament. Of course, one I think a lot of is Joshua. And recently I just finished a book on Joshua and his leadership. And he's quite a complex individual and never had it easy, but kept to the vision. And one thing, that sometimes we know but we forget is that Joshua had the vision to go into the promised land a lot longer or way before the people of God had the confidence to go in the promised land.
Right.
And God rewarded him for his vision and faith by allowing him and Caleb, the only two spies, who said, yeah, we can go into the promised land. God has given it to us. He allowed those two men, as opposed to the other 10 men, to go into the promised land with the children of Israel. And so that's who I think about when it comes to vision. And, of course, the Apostle Paul. He thought that the gospel was so good that he had to share it with anybody and everyone, and he got bitten by snakes for it. He got nearly killed hundreds of times. He put in prison. Yeah. And so, I mean, this is a guy who had a vision. And I would be willing to, not to bet. I don't bet very much because I have negative monies. But I would be willing to say that, we wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't be discussing this today if it wasn't for the vision that God gave in the hard times. I mean, I have never been bitten by a snake in church. I've never been stoned. I've never been put in prison. And sometimes I complain about seasons I go through and lose the vision. So, Andrew, as we kind of get ready to land this plane here now, this is a question I'm planning on asking every person that comes on the podcast because, of course, the purpose of this podcast and the Tuckamore Leader blog is to encourage pastors and church leaders to keep going. And the idea of the Tuckamore, of course, is we have this tree along the coast of Newfoundland, usually balsam or fir trees or sometimes spruce trees, that are close to the shore in exposed areas, and they tuck over. They kind of get bent over by the wind and the elements, but they don't give up. They're still there. You can look at them. They grow somewhat, but they don't give up, even in the hard times. And so is there something you wanted just to encourage that leader today or that pastor today with some thought or a couple thoughts to encourage them about not giving up, staying the course, keeping on what God is calling you to do?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of this stuff has been told to me. And I mean, I lead and people have mentored me with the mentality of not for me, but for tomorrow. So like I lead now, and use trailblazer. I would never use that word for myself, but I understand what you're saying. I hope that my leadership can help you go further, much faster. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like I don't want, not for me. It's to proclaim the gospel further, so you haven't got to trip up in the same things I tripped up in. Mm-hmm. And the mentors of before have done the same thing for me. So I'll pass on some information that they've helped me with. The first thing that I've heard so many times, and it's so true, until you experience it, you may not appreciate it, but don't quit on Monday.
Yeah, that's right.
Like Sunday often for pastors or whatever your day of the week that you're often your pinnacle point of your week. Don't quit after a bad Sunday or a bad event or a bad whatever. Mm-hmm. It's just tough. Just stick it out for a couple more days. Remember the why. Remember why you're even in the position that you're in. Why you took it on. What you lead for. That's what should drive you. The big picture. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and know that it takes time.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So leading takes time. Vision takes time. Mm-hmm. I love your baseball analogy. I'm going to steal that.
All right, that's cool.
But it takes time, and I look back and I'm like, man, I thought it'd be faster. I really did. Yeah. I thought we'd be doing more stuff, and I realize now, like, man, it all took time, and I don't think we didn't take our time like to the point of dragging it on. I think it just took time. Mm-hmm. And so you're if you want that space, 5-6 years, that's where we are now, and you just got to keep pushing. Mm-hmm. And if you're in conflict, man, that's a good thing. Yeah. Like don't think it's a bad thing. Don't think. We do a Halloween ministry every year. I mean, if you want to define conflict, that might be what you need to do. But at the same time, you're stressing people's minds in a good way. Stretching, not stressing. Stretching.
You might be stressing them out too.
Yeah, maybe. But you're doing it, and they're working through it. And if they're talking to you, that's even better because they're wanting to work through it. Mm-hmm. And that's a good thing. And so help them, be gracious, help them. and then surround yourself with people who are going to encourage you, and speak and sing your praises. I sing a shout out to Pastor Jeff White. He's in Deer Lake now, but he was in Portagrave a little while ago, and when we started here. And I mean, good old Jeff, man. I don't think I could have been falling apart, and he'd be like, "You're the best thing since sliced bread." He just
That's right.
even if it wasn't true, right? Like
Yeah.
he's just he's always singing your praises, right?
That's right.
And you need that. You need that in your life, not to butter you up, but to kind of say, it was rough. I needed that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And kind of keep going, right? And you need tough love too. You need that too.
Well, I think it's important to find the person that, whatever they say, they're telling the truth. And that close friend that the scriptures say, the wounds from a friend are faithful. Meaning that when I have people in my life that I have put in a place of authority in my life, friends, that when they say, listen, you're out of line here, or you got to be careful, I listen, because I know that they're coming from a place of wanting me to succeed. And at the same time, when they're saying, listen, you're doing a great job, or that was awesome, or wow, I can't believe you thought of that, that also tells me you're not just saying this to make me feel good, but they're acknowledging and appreciating what God is doing in my life and how I'm being obedient. So that's a big thing to every leader, every pastor, no matter if you are a Sunday school teacher or a midweek teacher or the senior pastor or staff pastor or the janitor. Does not matter. You need someone in your life that can tell you the honest truth at all times, that encourages you and challenges you.
Absolutely.
Other than your wife or your husband.
Well, that comes naturally, right? You got to ask for that. Yeah, that's called marriage.
We love our wives, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, listen, Andrew, this conversation has been absolutely wonderful. I wish we lived closer. The other night, we ended up popping into your house because of some circumstances, and we didn't want to leave. Really, we had to leave, but I know that you would have kicked us out eventually. But
maybe Deidre would have before I would have. I'm the extrovert, so I like talking.
But it was so good to talk to you then, and it's so good to talk to you now, and just to get the different perspective. And I really do see you as someone who is breaking new ground. And I think of a story that someone told me in my part of the woods here, that wintertime, back, before they had all the modern technology, they used to get a lot of snow in this one community close by, and they would use horses to break the trail. And so they would use one horse to break the trail to school so far, and when that horse got tired, another horse would come behind and break some more of the trail, and eventually the kids could go to school because 3 or 4 horses broke the trail in the deep snow for everyone to get there. And so I just hope that you and I can be horses that break trails for even pastors that are after us, or pastors that are older than us, that are looking to do some creative things and just want to know that someone's done it and broke the trail. So thank you so much today, Andrew, for your wisdom and for your insight. Awesome conversation. Every time we talk, it's fantastic, and I love what the vision of Bethel is. I always keep up to date to what you're doing. And so those of you listening, you can catch some of the things we talked about, some books. Andrew, would you send me the link to that book, an Amazon link or something, that if anybody wants to look at that book, they can find it, and I'll make sure to put your blog on the show notes as well, that people can look that up. Andrew, anything else you want to say just before you go?
Just I'm looking forward to listening to your podcast, and I'll definitely pass it on to other people. And any way that we can help, I'd love to connect with you. You can connect to the blog you said, or through you, and we would love to be a part of what you have to offer. Also, because I'm the first guest, you gotta bring me on again at some point.
Yes. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Like
I'd love to come back again when we're you're into it, not for a while.
That's yeah. Episode 2, and we're bringing back our first guest because I couldn't get anybody else.
No, I'm sure the 100th guest or something.
There you go. Hey, you're being very, very optimistic. That's good. I already got a couple people lined up, so we will definitely have you back. And just know, Andrew, I'm in your corner. To the leader today, the pastor listening, I'm in your corner. We want to see you succeed. Don't give up. Maybe hard today. You may be going through a challenging season, but God is faithful always, and He will bring you through. So don't give up today. Keep on doing what God has called you to do, no matter how difficult or challenging it may be. Andrew, thank you so much for this conversation. Say hello to the family for us, and really excited to see what God is doing in your ministry.
Will do. God bless.
Well, that was my interview with the always awesome Andrew Holm, the pastor at Bethel Pentecostal Church in Bay Roberts, Newfoundland. You can catch more about Andrew and his thoughts and ideas at his blog, andrewholm.com. That's all we have today, and we will look forward to speaking to a new leader next time. And I encourage you to tune in every time we have a new podcast. And I would love to hear your comments and thoughts on our show today and the shows in the future. Until next time, this is the Tuckamore Leader Podcast.